Well, most doctors who work in actual hospitals and medical institutions have to show up to the office. We know that employees are more productive and more efficient when they are working in an in-office environment.
All right, let's jump into what just happened on live TV. Because honestly, this might be one of the biggest media mess-ups we've seen all year. Michael Strahan, a former NFL star who is now a Good Morning America host, walked in like he was about to win a big political game. He came prepared, confident, probably hearing dramatic music in his head, and got ready to challenge Karoline Leavitt, President Trump's sharp and quick press secretary. Spoiler alert, things did not go the way he planned. Strahan may have crushed players on the football field, but in this interview, he got completely outplayed. He was talked over, outsmarted, tripped up, and totally shut down. Karoline didn't just survive his question. She flipped the whole situation, used it to her advantage, and made Strahan look like a beginner who showed up to the wrong sport. And the wild part? She barely raised her voice the entire time. So what really happened here? How did Strahan's planned gotcha moment turn into his own public embarrassment? Let's break it all down step by step. It all started with a question Strahan clearly thought would trap her. He asked about President Trump's plan to cut down the federal workforce by offering buyouts to around 2 million government employees.
We want to start with the administration's offer to buy with a mass buyout to federal employees out there. How many do you hope will take it, and by what percentage does the president want to downsize the federal workforce?
Now, if you're a mainstream media host, you'd probably expect this to make the administration look cold or uncaring. You'd think it would sound anti-worker, harsh, or even scary. But Karoline was ready for that angle. She didn't panic. She didn't dodge. She leaned right in and explained it clearly. This was not about firing. It was a voluntary buyout. That means optional. Workers could choose to leave if they wanted to. And not only that, it was a generous. They could take 8 months of paid leave and then walk away. No one was being forced out. No pink slips. No threat, just a choice, and a well-paid one too. And the reason behind it, as Karoline pointed out, was simple. Only about 6% of federal workers in Washington, D.C. are actually showing up at the office.
This is another promise made and kept by President Trump. He told the American people on the campaign trail that he was going to make our federal government more efficient and productive. And it is a fact that only 6% of the federal workforce here in Washington, D.C. actually shows up to the office.
Think about that for a second. Taxpayers are paying for electricity, heating, cleaning, and huge government building. Meanwhile, 94% of those workers are sitting at home, logging in from their couches, coffee in hand, still in pajamas. Acting like a quick Zoom call counts as real public service. Karoline didn't sugarcoat. She called it exactly what she thought it was: taxpayer-funded laziness. You could see Strahan freeze. He didn't know where to look. Karoline reminded everyone that real American workers like teachers, police officers, and nurses show up in person every single day. They can't just work from home. They don't get paid to stay on the couch. So why should federal bureaucrats get special treatment?
That is completely unacceptable. Middle-class Americans, our teachers, our nurses, our law enforcement officers who keep this economy working show up to the office every single day, and President Trump expects that federal employees do the same.
This is where Strahan tried to save himself. You could almost see his brain race. He stumbled and said, Okay, but what about doctors and scientists? He clearly thought this would finally trap her. But really, doctors working from home? Karoline didn't miss a beat. She said what most people were already thinking. You can't examine a patient through FaceTime. You can't run lab tests from your kitchen table. It's not real science. That's something you'd see on a TV comedy. Her answer was sharp but honest. This wasn't about being cruel, it was about reality. The administration was simply saying, if taxpayers are paying you, then you need to actually show up and do your job. Shocking idea, right?
So his order, as presented in that memo last night, directs federal agencies to come up with a return-to-work policy for their agencies. And if federal bureaucrats in this city don't like that, well, guess what? They can resign from their positions, and this administration is offering them 8 months of pay. They will be paid through September just to simply resign from their positions. If 5 to 10% of the federal workforce resigns, it will save taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. And so, look, we want people to return to work. We have beautiful federal office buildings here in Washington, D.C. that American taxpayers are paying for. They should be used. That's what the American people deserve.
Just when Strahan was trying to recover from that verbal hit, he threw out another big question. This time, he brought up federal assistance programs. He suggested that the Trump administration was cutting help for vulnerable people. underserved communities and those who need support the most. It was a classic emotional move, the kind of how dare you argument meant to make someone look heartless.
Let's get to the funding part. The White House putting a freeze on federal assistance program. The federal judges put the freeze temporarily on hold, saying the government itself doesn't have the full scope of the programs that are going to be impacted. So what's your response to that?
But Karoline completely shut that down. She made it very clear this was not some wild budget-cutting spree. It was a review, a temporary pause, a chance to look through the confusing mess of government funding and ask one simple question: is this money actually helping anyone at all?
This is a temporary pause on federal assistance and grants so that the Office of Management and Budget here in the Executive Office of the President can review all federal assistance that is going out the door.
Because here's the key point. This was never about taking food away from families or cutting grandma's Medicare. Karoline repeated this again and again. Important programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP benefits were not touched at all. Everything there stayed the same. What they paused was the wasteful spending that made no sense.
And as I repeatedly stated yesterday, individual assistance such as Medicare payments, Social Security benefits, welfare, food stamps, and Medicaid assistance will not be impacted by this federal pause. So the American people should not worry. If they're receiving individual assistance from the federal government, they will continue to receive that.
For example, and this sounds unbelievable, there was a government-funded study about shrimp running on treadmill. Yes, that was real. Your tax money paid for that. Karoline laid it out like she was reading a receipt after a terrible meal. She said they were not going to keep funding programs the administration wasn't even supporting anymore, like DEI training sessions and leftover Green New Deal projects. Why keep paying for policies the president already canceled? It's not kindness. That's just foolish. And at that point, Strahan was clearly finished.
And what we cannot do is fund programs that run contrary to the executive orders and actions that this president has already taken. So there will be no more federal funding for DEI programs. There will be no more federal funding for the Green New Deal, which is an order from the previous administration that President Trump has rescinded. It would make no sense for American taxpayers to pay for policies that this administration is no longer implementing.
He looked like he wanted the ground to open up and swallow him, but somehow he tried one last move. He mentioned that the rollout of the funding freeze had caused a short problem with the Medicaid website. This, he thought, was finally his big moment, a tech issue, a sign of chaos, proof that everything was falling apart. Except it wasn't.
The Medicaid system was disrupted across the country yesterday. Online portals, they went down in response to this freeze action. So should that not have happened? And is that a sign of a chaotic rollout?
The website was fine and fixed within minutes. Karoline answered directly. No excuses. Yes, they knew about it. Yes, it was corrected quickly. In fact, the system was running better than before. That question only made Strahan look unprepared, desperate, and careless.
No, absolutely not. And I would like to address that. We were made aware of that immediately, and we amended the problem immediately. The Medicaid program is back up and running online.
Karoline calmly explained that spreading wrong information only causes more panic. Strahan just sat there with an awkward smile, barely nodding. Every part of his attack had fallen apart. It honestly looked like a skilled debate coach shutting down a confused student who didn't study. And just when you thought it was over, Strahan tried again. This time, he played the Kennedy card. He brought up Karoline Kennedy criticizing RFK Jr., Trump's pick for Secretary of Health and Human Services. He even quoted her calling RFK Jr. dangerous and badly informed.
Okay, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., let's go to another topic. We have a lot to cover here. President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services has his confirmation hearing this morning, where his cousin Karoline Kennedy, she's speaking out against him, calling him, quote, unqualified with dangerous and willfully misinformed views on vaccines, and that he is a predator. And what's your response to that?
Karoline's response was a total mic drop. She didn't just defend RFK Jr., she laid out his entire background. She talked about his long career in public health, environmental work, and fighting for transparency and science. She reminded everyone that he wasn't some random conspiracy figure. He had real legal wins, published research, and years of holding powerful groups accountable.
I would reject those comments fiercely. RFK Jr. is widely respected. He's a great man who has dedicated his life to public service and to research. He is pro-science, and he is committed to making this country healthy again. He campaigned alongside President Trump, and they spoke that motto to tens of millions of Americans across the country who clearly believed in it. America is one of the richest yet unhealthiest countries in the world.
She said what a lot of Americans already feel. The United States is one of the richest countries in the world. yet also one of the unhealthiest. If someone wants to ask tough questions about that, maybe we should listen instead of shutting them down. And if you disagree with RFK Jr., that's fine. But calling him dangerous just because he challenges broken systems isn't journalism. It's fear. And Karoline made it clear she wasn't buying. By then, Strahan had nothing left. He came looking for a viral moment. Instead, he walked away with a lesson in calm confidence, facts, and control.
If you look at our obesity rates, our autism rates, we should be performing far better. Our people should be much healthier. And that's all that RFK Jr. is trying to do. And so President Trump stands strongly behind him, and we look forward to watching him shine on Capitol Hill today in his confirmation hearing, just like all of the other nominees that President Trump has appointed to their respective agencies and departments.
And yes, the internet notes. So what's the big takeaway? The media elite don't like people like Karoline Leavitt, not because she's wrong, but because she won't back down. She doesn't play their game. She doesn't get trapped by loaded questions or dramatic story. When the spotlight hits her, she doesn't rely on drama or spin. She sticks to fact, logic, and purpose. And that drives them crazy because they're used to conservatives who apologize or play defense. Karoline doesn't do that. She flips the script and forces them to explain them. She turns gotcha questions into teaching moments. That's why Trump chose her. That's why supporters love her. And that's why she keeps winning these, because truth, clarity, and confidence beat flashy media tricks every time. Michael Strahan may be a legend on the football field, but in political talk, Karoline Leavitt just knocked him back hard. If you made it this far, hit like, subscribe for more breakdowns like this, and tell me what you think in the comments. Was this the best media takedown of the year? Or have you seen a bigger one? I'll be reading them all.